When the new cleaning girl arrived at Axton Group headquarters, no one even bothered to learn her name. She wore a faded blue uniform, her hair neatly tied back, her eyes always lowered. Every morning, she quietly pushed her cleaning cart through the marble corridors while employees in expensive suits passed by without a glance, or worse, with mocking smiles. Another poor girl trying to survive, someone whispered near the elevator. At least she knows her place, another laughed. Her name was Elena, but no one called her that. To them, she was just the cleaner. What no one knew was that Elena had once stood in these same halls wearing designer dresses, walking beside the most powerful man in the building, the CEO himself. Now, she cleaned their messes. Humiliation at every turn. Elena worked hard, never complaining. She scrubbed floors, emptied trash, polished glass doors that reflected faces filled with arrogance. One afternoon, a senior manager named Linda deliberately spilled coffee near Elena's feet. "Clean it properly," Linda said coldly. "This isn't your village." The surrounding staff laughed. Elena said nothing. She knelt down, wiped the floor, and moved on. Inside, her heart ached, not from the insult, but from the memories. Because Linda had once smiled politely at her, back when Elena was introduced as Mrs. Alexander Reed. Why she was there. Months earlier, Elena had made a choice no one would understand. Her husband, Alexander Reed, the feared and respected CEO of Axton Group, had asked her a simple question. "Do you trust me?" Elena nodded. "There are people in my company who respect power, not people," he said. "I need to know who they really are." So Elena volunteered to come undercover, as a cleaner. Not to test love, not to seek revenge, but to reveal truth. Alexander didn't want to interfere. He wanted to watch silently. And so did she. The cruel joke. One day, during lunch break, Elena overheard a group of employees gossiping. "Did you hear?" one said. "The CEO's wife never shows her face. Probably ashamed." Another laughed. "If I were married to a billionaire, I'd never stop showing off." They didn't notice Elena standing nearby, holding a mop. Her fingers tightened around the handle. If only you knew, she thought. That evening, Elena went home to a penthouse overlooking the city, where Alexander waited for her with worry in his eyes. "They were cruel today," he said softly. Elena smiled faintly. "I'm fine." But her silence spoke louder. Alexander clenched his jaw. "They've forgotten what respect means," he said. "Soon, they'll remember." The announcement. The next morning, a company-wide email was sent. Mandatory executive meeting. All staff must attend. Rumors spread like wildfire. Elena continued cleaning as usual, until security approached her. "You're needed in the main hall," one guard said. People stared. Why would a cleaner be invited? Someone scoffed. Elena straightened her uniform and walked forward calmly. No one noticed the quiet confidence in her steps. Not yet. The main hall of Axton Group had never felt so heavy with silence. Hundreds of employees sat frozen in their seats, eyes fixed on the stage where Alexander Reed, the CEO, stood holding the hand of the woman they had ignored, mocked, and humiliated for weeks. The cleaning girl, Elena. Linda's face had drained of color. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to speak, to explain, to undo the past, but no sound came out. Around her, people shifted uncomfortably. Some lowered their heads, others stared at Elena as though she might disappear if they blinked. Alexander's voice broke the silence. "She is my wife," he repeated, slower this time, each word landing like a hammer. "And she has been working here by my request." A gasp rippled through the room. Again, louder than before. Whispers erupted, sharp and frantic. "No, that's impossible. The cleaner, we joked about her." Elena felt every stare, every unspoken thought. Her heart pounded, but she lifted her chin. She had walked these halls quietly, invisibly. Now, she stood in the brightest light. Alexander released her hand only to step closer to the podium. "For years," he said, "I have heard reports about arrogance in this company. Complaints about disrespect. I wanted facts, not rumors." He paused, eyes hardening. "So my wife offered herself as the test." A low murmur filled the room. "She volunteered to come here every morning before sunrise. She cleaned your offices. She emptied your trash. She listened." His gaze swept across the audience. "And what she heard disgusted me." The weight of their words. Alexander nodded slightly to Elena. She took a breath and stepped forward. "I never came here to judge," she began softly. "I wanted to understand." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with emotion carefully restrained. "Some of you smiled at me. Said good morning. Treated me like a human being. She paused. Thank you. I will never forget that. A few people swallowed hard. But many of you, she looked toward Linda, then toward the group who used to laugh near the elevators. You treated me as if I was less than nothing. Linda shook her head rapidly. I didn't know. Elena raised a hand gently. That's exactly the problem. Silence again. You didn't know who I was, so you thought it was acceptable. Her words were quiet, but they cut deeper than shouting. I was called uneducated. I was told to know my place. I was mocked for my clothes. I was spoken about as if I wasn't standing right there. A man in the third row covered his face with his hands. I went home every night, Elena continued, and washed my hands again and again. Not because of the dirt, but because of how small you made me feel. Alexander clenched his fists. The collapse of power. Linda suddenly stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I apologize, she said, voice shaking. I truly do. I didn't mean. Alexander turned to her sharply. Sit down. She froze, then slowly obeyed. An apology given only when power is revealed, he said coldly, is not an apology. It is fear. Linda's eyes filled with tears. Alexander pressed a button on the podium. The large screen behind him lit up. Video footage began to play. Security recordings. There was Linda spilling coffee near Elena's feet. Employees laughing while Elena scrubbed the floor. A group mocking her accent. Another joking about how cleaners should be grateful to breathe the same air. Each clip felt like a public confession. Some employees whispered prayers. Others stared at the floor, wishing it would open and swallow them whole. I watched all of this, Alexander said. Every word, every laugh. He turned to the HR director seated near the front. Effective immediately, he said, those shown in these recordings are suspended pending termination review. Gasps, cries, please, no, please, I have a family, it was just a joke. Alexander didn't blink. Cruelty disguised as humor is still cruelty. Elena's strength. Elena stepped forward again. Please, she said suddenly. Alexander looked at her, surprised. She turned back to the crowd. I don't want revenge, she said. I want change. Some people looked up, hope flickering in their eyes. I don't want anyone fired simply because of anger, she continued. But I do want accountability. Alexander studied her for a moment, then nodded. Very well, he said. Those involved will undergo formal investigation, ethics training, and final review. Repeated offenders will be dismissed. The tension in the room shifted, still heavy, but different. Elena took a slow breath. I worked alongside the real backbone of this company, she said. The cleaners, the maintenance staff, the people you don't see. She smiled faintly. They treated me with kindness. They shared food with me. They listened when I cried in the supply room. Her voice cracked slightly. They never asked who I was. A different kind of power. After the meeting ended, the room emptied slowly. People avoided Elena's gaze. Some bowed their heads in shame. Others whispered apologies as they passed. Linda lingered near the exit, eyes red and swollen. Elena, she whispered. Elena stopped. I'm sorry, Linda said, tears spilling over. I hated my job. I hated my life. And I took it out on you. Elena looked at her for a long moment. I forgive you, she said quietly. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Linda nodded, defeated. That evening, Elena returned home to the penthouse. She kicked off her shoes and sank onto the couch, exhaustion finally overtaking her. Alexander sat beside her. You were incredible today, he said softly. Elena leaned her head against his shoulder. I was terrified, she admitted. Every day, he kissed her forehead. You were braver than all of them. The change begins. Weeks passed. Axton Group transformed. Mandatory ethics workshops were introduced. Anonymous reporting systems were strengthened. Respect training became part of onboarding. But the biggest shock came when Alexander made another announcement. Elena Reed will be assuming the role of Director of Corporate Ethics and Culture, he said at a press conference. The media exploded. CEO's wife once worked as cleaner. Undercover wife exposes corporate cruelty. Powerful lesson in humility. Elena stood beside Alexander, calm and composed. I don't want fear to drive kindness, she told reporters. I want empathy too. Never forgotten. Despite her new role, Elena kept one habit. Every morning, she arrived early. She greeted the cleaning staff by name. She drank tea with them. She listened. Sometimes, she picked up a cloth and helped wipe a table. One young cleaner asked her once, "Why do you still do this, ma'am?" Elena smiled. Because I remember. And the company remembered too. No one ever looked at a cleaner the same way again. Because once, the poorest girl among them had been the most powerful of all.